Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box as the microphone turns. That's not actually the title of the show. That's just what I'm doing with my microphone to make sure that you can hear me as loudly as a Wagnerian overture. Because today we're celebrating the 1813 birth of one of the two most important composers in all of Western European classical music. Not Western European, but Western/European. You get the idea. So, Wagner, he was a titan for so many reasons. He changed music. You could say he improved music. He challenged music audiences. He changed the way music was consumed. He democratized music access. He created themes and leitmotifs that are familiar to people who aren't even that into music, let alone classical music. He was a very interesting man, a very interesting thinker. He was profound and he was prolific in every imaginable way. And the funny thing is, I'm not even much of an opera listener, even though opera was the form that most of Wagner's music took. And the reason why is because his operas were more like tone poems with singing than they were like a traditional opera. In a traditional opera, you have arias that really are the highlights of the opera, and everything in between is kind of filler. And after the aria, the singer stands there and the audience claps, and it's very enjoyable, and the many are very, very nice, but there's also something about it a bit contrived. Wagner's operas tended to all be a continuous flow of music, again, like a symphonic poem, a tone poem. And of course, it had vocalizing, it had singing, but it all melded together. There was a lot of operas, both before and after Wagner, in many different operatic traditions, were all about featuring a soloist. Wagner's opera was about featuring the music overall, the theme overall, a mysticism conveyed by the libretto, conveyed by the score, and conveyed by the philosophical input that Wagner put into all of his great compositions. As someone who changed music, he was really, in many ways, the pinnacle of European romanticism. It had storm and fury. It had memorable melody lines, memorable light motifs, memorable concepts. Just for example, the flight of the Valkyrie it's been used. That alone has been used in so much. Rienzi's overture has been used so much. Tristan und Isolde has been used so much so that some even accused Bernard Herrmann of copying it for his score to the Alfred Hitchcock film North by Northwest. Wagner is everywhere. John Williams, the great film composer of the 20th and 21st century, very much inspired by Wagner. But of all the people that were inspired by Wagner, none were Wagner himself. There was something about his music that was so pure, even though, apart from perhaps Parsifal, you could say that all of it was secular music, but it had a spiritual weight to it that just made you sit up and it made your heart beat differently. It makes you think about life differently. And his innovations with the orchestra that people came to know by the end of the 19th century and into the contemporary 20th century age, that was Wagner's orchestra. And he was very much a conscious innovator. He knew that orchestras needed to be larger, the instruments needed to be of better quality, the rehearsals needed to be more precise, the sound needed to be big enough to fill the large modern concert halls that in many ways Wagner is responsible for. The opera house at Bayreuth that was built with Wagner's input, it really is the house of Wagner. It doesn't have segregated seating. There are no boxes. It is essentially a single semicircle, if you will, of seats where equality among audience members is the word of the day. He democratized music. Wagner's operas were music for the masses. Think Michael Jackson in terms of appeal. Think Taylor Swift. Think Frank Sinatra. Think the Beatles. This was Wagner. Music for the masses, popular in every capital of Europe, popular in all of the big cities at the time in the United States, mostly the East Coast. Chicago, of course, was a very prominent city, increasingly Cleveland and other Midwestern cities as well. And Wagner sold out. He sold out the tickets because he helped to create an orchestral sound that was larger than life, that was exciting. And modern conducting was also invented by Wagner. It was much more of an ad hoc trade before Wagner, but Wagner really took all of the great oral traditions of conducting and he made it very clear that the role of the conductor isn't just about beating time. It's about using rubato, influencing and shaping and sculpting dynamics to create emotions that are intrinsically related to the music. And that's why the conductors that conducted under Wagner at Bayreuth were the most important conductors of the 19th century. And the people that surrounded that conducting school, people like Arthur Nikisch, people like von Bülow, people like Lull, all of these great conductors who then paved the way for the next generation of conductors trained in that Wagner mold, the Furtwänglers and Mengelbergs, whose recordings are luckily ubiquitous because Wagner died in 1883. So we have people that are really just one generation, or in some cases, half a generation removed from Wagner's glory days. So we do have on recording people who are conducting in that grand Wagnerian style, which is the essence, and frankly, the only way in my world and in the world of audience members who want music to be powerful and exciting. That is the only way to approach European classical music. Many trends in classical music have come and gone, some for spurious and fatuous reasons, some for reasons that are a bit more interesting, let's say. But Wagner's popularity has always remained. He's popular among audiences, as I said, even that don't necessarily like classical music. And the reason is because everyone has heard some Wagner, and not just among cultures influenced by European classical music. Throughout the world, he remains popular in Japan, in China. Indian conductors conduct him. It really is a global phenomenon. And in many ways, Wagner helped to keep Beethoven's legacy at the front and center. Because when I say Wagner is one of the two most important composers of European classical music, the other is, of course, Beethoven. And it was Wagner whose school of conducting really brought Beethoven to life by performing it with better rehearsed, larger, fuller, nicer sounding orchestras than were even around for much of Beethoven's life. So Wagner really was almost like the godchild of Beethoven in terms of this overall tradition. So we wish a very, very happy birthday to Wagner. Listen to his music, and in fact, his son Siegfried Wagner even survived well into the recorded age. You can listen to Siegfried conducting some of his father's music. You can't get much more authentic than that. If only Wagner was slightly younger and lived into the age of recorded sound. Oh well, but there are many good recordings. Furtwängler, Mengelberg, Siegfried Wagner, Abendroth, Knappelsbusch, Karajan, Böhm, you can't go wrong. Happy birthday, and we will see you next time. Like, subscribe, take care.